what it is, what's happening. So today we're going to do some brake lines on the F-250, the 96 F-250 truck. We got one here that's leaking right above the rear axle. So I'm going to go ahead and do all the brake lines. Since I'm going to have to bleed the system, I'm just going to do all of them. When I bought this truck, somebody did front hoses, calipers, rotors, and all that stuff. But since I'm going to have the system open, it just makes more sense just to do all the lines. So what I like to do when I do brake lines, and everybody has their own way of doing them. I don't like to buy them in a roll. I buy them in straight lengths, 60-inch straight lengths, and then I'll just make them up. So we'll go through the process of cutting them, flaring them, and bending them. So let me get started. What I like to do is, this one looks like it's been yanked on something. It's all bent up. So what I like to do is, I'll go in, pair of dikes, and I'll just cut them. Like I said, everybody has their own way of doing them. This is just how I like to do them. I've been doing them this way for 30 years. I'll go in, cut them off real close to the fitting, because I'm not going to reuse it. The only fitting I'm going to reuse is on a Ford truck. The line that goes to that side, this nut is different than the rest of them. So I'll have to reuse that one. But these ones I can take off, throw them away. And there's where we were broke. All right, the line out of there. Line's out of the way. And what I usually do, I get a nice straight length from Napa. My next step is I'm going to remove the fittings. And the reason I take and cut them off is I can put a socket on there, which will be a lot easier than fighting these crusty old things with a wrench. So let me go get some tubes. I'll be right back. Got some 7/16 on a little 1/4-inch ratchet. And that makes it a lot easier than sitting there and fighting it with a wrench. I can knock this right off. And we'll replace them with the new ones. Now, it's a good time to do something here I'm going to talk about. A lot of guys don't do. The vent line's missing off of here. Let me bring you in and show you. The vent hose for the rear is missing. I'm going to replace that. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to take that fitting out of there, and I'm going to make sure that that hole in the end of this fitting is clear. You always want to make sure the vent is clear and is working. What will happen is, if that thing's not venting, it will blow an axle seal. And it'll push fluid, grease, oil onto the brake shoes, and that's another mess that we'd have to repair. And this one's got a little bit of oil on there. I don't know if that's old. I've never had the drums off this truck, so I'll probably pop that drum off and investigate. But this truck stopped really well before we lost the brake line. And it's a shame because the rest of the brake line here doesn't look bad. But the one up in the frame rail there has been repaired. We'll bring you in for a closer look. You can see that where somebody's put a piece in. Now why they just wouldn't replace the whole line all the way to the front of the truck is beyond me. I will be replacing it. Now on these trucks, these OBS trucks, you can actually get your hand in there between the frame rail and the gas tank and massage the line around in there without dropping the tank. So I just buy 2 long ones, put a union, and I'll fish it down the frame rail and get it real close. It's not going to be exact, but we're not dropping the tank on this truck today. We're not doing all that. So we're going to finish getting this cleaned up, and get this out, get it cleaned up, and get that off, and we'll come back. We'll bend some lines. I probably should have also mentioned that now's a good time to go ahead and make sure the brake levers will open up. And if not, we're doing wheel cylinders. Or we're going to put a little heat on them, one or the other. Let's see if she'll come loose. Get myself a little leverage here. She don't feel like she wants to work. Nope. So I think we're going to have to bring in the heat. Put a little heat on that And so we can heat the bleeder up to get the bleeders working. And that's our other end of the line there. Now that won't come out of there, but we'll get her out. Imagine trying to do that with a wrench, as rusty and crusty and dusty as this thing is. So now I'll put a little heat on that bleeder and see if we can get that bleeder to crack loose. So let me roll the torches over, and we'll do that. Now I understand not everybody has a set of torches, but you might be able to get it warm enough with some MAP gas or propane. Sometimes that's just enough, right there. There she goes. Now what I like to do is, I'll take the bleeder all the way out, I'll clean it up, and I'll put a little Never Sees on it. Not that that's really gonna help it in the future, but gives it a fighting chance. Plus, we'll also make sure the hole in the end of the bleeder is cleaned up. There's our bleeder, and there's a little tiny hole right there. Let's see here. You can really see it or not, but we'll make sure that that's clean and open so we can bleed the brakes. So now, let's bend some brake lines. Okay, so I did make a mistake. I am going to have to reuse the fitting out towards the wheel cylinder because the fitting is actually, the thread size is bigger than the new line. So what I need to do is I need to drill that out 3/16, clean this up, and then we're going to have to cut it and flare it. So let's go do that now. It's always something. All right, got my fitting on the line. So now we'll start to bend the line. Now this is 3/16, it bends pretty easy. I like to start in there on the wheel cylinder side. I'll screw it on. I'll go ahead and screw it into the wheel cylinder. And then I'll just kind of bend it from there. Now I'm going to have to cut it off down here where I'm at, but as you can see, we're all in where we need to be. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll make our rough about where we want to be. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll do this. That way I can figure out where I want to be. And we got a brake line. That's simple. So don't be scared to bend brake lines. They're not hard to do. Now when you get into 1/4 inch, and 3/8 and 5/16 and a little bit bigger, you're going to want to use a tube and bender. But bend this 3/16 line, and this is the coated green line. I prefer this. They do make the copper nickel line, which bends really easy. But one of the reasons I don't like to use it, especially on a four-wheel drive truck or a truck you're going to use as a truck, something can catch that stuff and it pulls and bends too easy. This, at least if you're driving across a field or something and something grabs it, this will hold up a lot better than the copper nickel line. A lot of guys like using it because it bends super easy, but I prefer the green coated brake line. And it seems, since we live on the East Coast and now I live at the beach, this stuff holds up pretty well. I did all the brake lines on my rollback probably 18 years ago, and I haven't touched it since. And I did it all with the green coated line. So now next what I'm going to do is, you don't want to do like I've done in the past, and don't flare the line without that. So let's get into flaring the line. I'm going to show you how I use this hydraulic flare tool. So let me get this back off the truck, and we'll set up somewhere where it's easier to see, not under the truck. Now, unfortunately, I don't have the shop all the way set up. As you can see, I'm still working on that, but I need this truck, so I figured why not do a video while I do the brake lines on the truck. So now I've marked where I need to cut it, so I'm going to go ahead and cut it, which is pretty easy to do. Now, not everybody has one of these flare tools. When they came out, they were kind of pricey, but they are pretty sweet. There's a bunch of different ones on the market. This one I happen to get from my local tool, Matco guy. I think a bunch of other people make it. So let's show you what I got here. So we're going to make a double flare for our brake line. Don't forget your nut. Trust me, I've done that many a time. So the first thing we're going to do is get our tool. This thing out of the way. I wish I had the workbench cleaned off so we could do a lot nicer video, but this, our 3/16 die, this is going to be our first part of our flare. It actually takes two pieces to do it. This particular tool, slide the line in, run the line all the way to the end here. I'll show you a close-up once I get there. This particular tool, you want to run the line so it's at the top part of the die. The first part to the double flare is it uses this guy here. That's going to make our first part of our double flare. It's pretty simple. Line it up, make sure the little teat gets inside the line, and you just pump that handle. Pushes the die right into it. Back it off. Second one is a cone shape, and that drives it home. That'll make a nice double flare. And again, the cone goes right in the center of the line. A couple of pumps, and you should have a nice double flare. A lot of moving pieces. That looks pretty decent. Now, one thing I've found with this tool over using it over time is these dies, so that it doesn't push the line through, these dies have these ridges, and they tend to leave marks on the line. So how I've been fixing that is, what I'll do is I'll tighten down a union on it, and that'll pull it up and it'll straighten it up. So let's go ahead and do that, and then we'll slide it on the truck and see what she looks like. All right, we'll go ahead and start putting the line on. I like to reuse all the factory clamps that are on the rear. And I just take my dikes and just gently squeeze in there to open it up. Sometimes you can use a screwdriver. Probably should use it as a hammer, but who cares? Now, I realize not everybody has one of those flaring tools. They're kind of pricey, and if you don't do brake lines on the daily, it doesn't make sense for you to have one. I do believe some parts stores are starting to rent them now because brake lines are just so common anymore. So it sure beats doing it the old way with the mechanical flare tool with the little thing that you got to stick in there to make the double flare, because they're a real pain. But as you can see, I just made brake lines for this 96 truck in a few minutes. Don't be scared to bend them. Don't be scared to shove them around, but as you can see, that's a nice clean line. Perfect. Now they do sell kits. You can buy kits. I did spend $80 in six pieces of straight line. The line has gone up some, but a kit for this truck is right around $200 and some. $80, I can bend my own lines. They're not hard. I've been doing it for 30 years, and as you can see, this is a pretty clean job. Is it like factory? Is it like fully restored? No. But will this work? Yes. This is perfectly fine. Very acceptable. It's just as bent as it was prior to me working on it. It's back in all the little widgets and all bolted up. So now I'm going to go ahead and make this other line. And then I'm going to do the one down the frame rail. And then we'll bleed it out. Now when you bleed these systems out, I'll bring you along for the bleed. You want to start at your furthest wheel. So we're going to start at the right rear. And we're going to go left rear. And we're going to go right front. And then left front. That's the correct way to bleed out one of these older vehicles. And that applies to pretty much anything, really. There are exceptions to some vehicles where they want you to cross bleed it and all, but that's usually some kind of odd system. Some kind of exotic cars to do that kind of weird stuff. But theoretically, it's usually right rear, right front, left front, so on and so forth. So let me get at it. I'm going to finish making these lines up, and then I'll bring you along. We'll make a couple lines for the front. So now I'm getting ready to run the line from the back of the truck to the front. I'm going to show you a little trick when you're running straight line, or even if you buy it in a coil, and you straighten it out, and you want to just run the line, and you want to run it down the frame rail and sneak it behind the gas tank. I'm going to show you a little trick because a lot of guys always fight this. So you're shoving the line. If you're trying to shove the line through the frame rail and your fitting right here keeps moving. So you're trying to reach in the frame rail between the gas tank and the fitting keeps moving. What I do is I'll put my two lines together with my union. Then what I do is I put a union on the other end here. I put a piece of tape across here. And then I'll shove this through the frame. Now my nut does not move with the line, and I don't get any trash inside the line as I'm fishing it through the frame rail. Now I can fish it all the way through the frame rail. And when I get to the end where I got to make my bend or where I got to make my next connection, I can just simply unscrew this guy. Now my nut stays still, and I have no trash in the end of the line. So hopefully that'll help you. Now you can tell I'm an East Coast guy, and you can tell I do a lot of brake lines when I pick up some little tricks like that. So let me get at it. I'll make the line, and I'll show you what our finished product looks like. You be the judge. All right, I got the line done down the frame rail. The ones across the rear are done. I'm going to make one that goes from the driver's side wheel over to the passenger side wheel. I want to make that line since I got to bleed all the brakes anyway. Just because that line's always known to rust out and leak. Let me show you what I got so far. So here's what we got on the rear. Our rear lines are done all the way across the back. Now I showed you that line that was pieced together up underneath the truck. Well, I decided I was going to do the line that runs down the frame rail. You can see it's kind of hard to see behind the fuel lines, but there's the line there. You can see the newer green line. It's all back in its plastic clips. Let's go up to the front of the truck. Line hooks into our rear ABS unit, and it goes all the way down the frame rail, and it's all back in the plastic little clips that hold it there. It goes all the way down the rail. I don't know if you can see it all. It's kind of hard to see, but it's everywhere it needs to be. It's back in all of its little plastic brackets. If you take your time, you can run that line down the frame. Now, like I said before, this 3/16 line bends easy. GMs use 1/4 inch line. That's a little more difficult to work with, but you can still work with it. So now I'm going to do a line from this wheel over, and then we're going to bleed the brakes. And hopefully That'll be simple, and this project will be done for today. There's plenty more to do to this truck, but this will get this truck back on the road so we can use it. So let me get making this line, and let's get on to the next one. Well, I made the front line. Unfortunately, I do a lot of my videos using my phone, and it was full, and it did not save the time-lapse video of me making this brake line. I was going to show you guys. Sorry. So this is the front brake line that goes from wheel to wheel. I made a new one. Throw that one in the trash. And there's our new one. So now all I gotta do is cut it and flare it on this end and then put it in the truck, and we're ready to go. Sorry, I don't have a fancy camera crew following me around. This is a one-man show. All these projects and all this junk that I own belongs to me. I got no sponsorship. I've got nobody giving me free parts. This isn't Gas Monkey Garage where everything's handed to them lock, stock, and barrel. This is all bought and paid for by me, this hillbilly. So, back to this thing. We're going to go ahead and cut and flare this thing and get it on the truck. So now I got the front line all made up and installed in the truck. Real close to the factory line. So now all I got left to do is bleed the brakes out. I'm probably going to end the video here because this phone is acting up, telling me it's full storage. You know, you buy the phone with the most storage space, and miraculously it doesn't ever work. So I don't know, it keeps cutting out. So I'll finish the video up there for today for this project. There is a lot more I'm going to do with this truck. I'll share on the channel. I just figured I'd share, making a few brake lines. A couple tips maybe to help you guys that are wanting to make brake lines. Just take your time. You can do it. It's not that difficult. Fortunately for me, I've been doing it for 30 years. I grew up owning junk. I'll continue to own junk. It's just part of the cycle of life. Keep it on the road. Don't let it rust. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a shop, and my dad opened the door up and said, "There you go, have at it, don't burn the building down." So I had to learn a lot of this stuff on my own. So take your time, don't rush through it, don't get frustrated. The line's not that terribly expensive. So if you ruin a piece of line, go back to Nappy and get another line. Start over. It's not a big deal. A lot of times I mess up. In fact, I messed up this morning on the first one I made because I forgot to put the fitting on. So it is what it is, it happens. I'll keep that piece, you know, sometimes you need a little piece. I've got tons of it laying around here. I'm always doing brake lines or something. Now, like I said before, and I showed in the beginning of the video, somebody had put a piece of brake line in on the main line running down the frame. Why people do that, I'll never be able to figure it out. If that little section was rotted and you replaced it, just do the whole line. Don't try to piece it in. You're causing yourself a headache down the road. You might fix that spot, but there'll be a weak spot up here, guaranteed. That's why I did the line that goes across the frame rail from side to side. They're always known. The two coming down from the master cylinder, they don't look hateful, so we're going to leave them be for right now. But we did go ahead and do the ones all the way to the rear and out to the rear wheels. We got both the wheel cylinder, the bleeders out of the wheel cylinders cleaned up, lubed up, ready to go. Like I said, the front calipers are new, so the brakes should bleed out and be perfect. So on the next video, we're going to do some other stuff to this truck. It's a really good running, good driving 460 truck. I'd like to put a level kit on it because it has a little bit of a nosedive. So maybe the next couple of weeks I'll order springs and drop brackets for the front, and maybe we'll put a leveling kit on it, get this thing sit level, because I do like this truck. Not that I'm really going to use it a whole lot. Big block, four-wheel drive truck, rides like a shit brick house, but they're cool. How cool is a F-250 with a 460? That's just cool. So we're going to do that. We got a floorboard on this side here that needs a little work, so we're going to do something with the floorboard there. I do have a piece of floor pan for one of these trucks. Where it's at, I don't know. Still probably packed in the other building from the big move. But that'll be a project we're going to get to. I did find this morning, I've been slowly going through boxes from the move. I did find, I bought a bunch of wheel arches for these trucks, and I did find 2 sets of them today finally. So I'm close to the box where that floor pan is. I just don't know where it's at. I'm close. The other building is a 3-car garage and 2 bays are full of crap. Boxes of stuff from the other shop. So we'll get there. So look, holler at your boy. Catch me on the next one. And I think when we let this down, I think we're going to bring in, I think we're going to pull the motor in a Mini Cooper. I got a 08 Mini Cooper, which eventually will be my gas cruiser. It's got an exhaust valve hung open. Don't know why. I did pull the valve cover, kind of gave it a quick assessment. It's carboned up really bad, so I don't know if it's a big chunk of carbon or if the valve seat fell out, but we got something going on holding the exhaust valve open, and we got no compression in number 3 cylinder. So I might bring it in and pop the motor out of it. That might be our little next, just a quickie slide in. We do got some maintenance things to do on the Mercedes, which is my new daily driver. I might share a couple things that's got to be done on the Mercedes as well. So look, holler at your boy, catch me on the next one, and keep it reals.